in the heart of a bustling city where bright lights compete with shadows. A solitary bus stop stands as a cold and lonely sanctuary. The frigid night air cuts through the thick silence, broken only by the occasional rumble of passing cars. Plastic benches, weathered by time and neglect, sit empty save for one the spot occupied by a young girl wrapped in a tattered blanket, her small frame shivering against the biting chill. The flickering street light casts an uneven glow, illum aiding her tear-streaked face, reflecting the pain and weariness that comes from countless sleepless nights. Meet Maya, a determined 12-year-old girl with big dreams, but an even bigger burden, with dark curls framing her face and eyes that hold a mixture of hope and despair. Maya embodies resilience. She finds solace in her imagination, where she dreams of a better life, one filled with warmth, love, and safety. Each night, she curls up at the bus stop, clutching her belongings, a faded backpack filled with school books, a sketch pad, and a few cherished MOS from better days. Despite her circumstances, Maya remains resourceful, scavenging for food and avoiding trouble, always reminding herself that tomorrow could be different. But the world outside her dreams is fraught with challenges, especially for a young black girl navigating a city that often sees her as invisible, or worse, as a threat, as she tries to survive in a society that can be harsh and unforgiving. The racial undertones of her experience become increasingly evident. The bus stop, once a temporary refuge, becomes a battleground where Maya confronts prejudice and bias, leaving her vulnerable and desperate for help. With each passing day, the weight of systemic racism looms large, complicating her struggle for safety and dignity in a world that often overlooks her plight. In the midst of this harsh reality, a chance encounter with a police officer will alter the course of her life, challenging not just his understanding of compassion, but also exposing the systemic issues that plague their community. Maya's life hasn't always been this way. Once she lived in a small apartment with her mother, a hardworking woman who juggled 2 jobs to make ends meet. However, when her mother fell ill and lost her job, the family spiraled into financial instability, unable to pay rent. They were evicted, and Maya's mother, overwhelmed by grief and stress, became distant, eventually disappearing from Maya's life, entirely left with no other options. Maya sought refuge on the streets, carrying only the few belongings she could pack in her backpack. The absence of her mother weighs heavily on her heart, and she often wonders if she could have done something to prevent their separation. Despite the harsh reality she faces, Maya's spirit remains unbroken. She dreams of becoming an artist, using her sketches and paintings to tell stories that resonate with others. Her sketch pad is filled with vibrant drawings of fantastical worlds, filled with colors and characters that escape her bleak surroundings. Education is another aspiration she yearns to return to school and learn about the world beyond the city blocks. However, with each passing day spent at the bus stop, those dreams seem to drift further away, overshadowed by the relentless struggle for survival. Maya's nightly routine at the bus stop is a testament to her resilience. As night falls, she wraps herself in her blanket, using it as a shield against the cold. She scans the area for potential threats, knowing that safety is never guaranteed. Every sound, a car door slamming, footsteps approaching, makes her heart race. The bus stop, once a place of transit for others, becomes her temporary home, where she must navigate the fine line between visibility and invisibility. Finding food is another challenge. Most nights she searches for leftover meals in nearby dumpsters, hoping to find something edible. Occasionally she encounters sympathetic strangers who offer her a sandwich or a warm drink, small acts of kindness that remind her that compassion still exists. Yet more often than not, she goes to bed hungry, her stomach growling as she dreams of the meal she once enjoyed each day. She fights against the odds, hoping that one day her situation will change and that she will have the chance to pursue the life she envisions for herself. Officer Jake Thompson has spent over a decade on the force, patrolling the same neighborhoods where he grew up. Coming from a family of law enforcement, he believed he would be a beacon of justice in a community plagued by crime. However, as the years went by, his experiences began to shape a hardened view of the residents he served. While he started with noble intentions, countless encounters with troubled youth and suspected criminals slowly chipped away at his initial ideals. Though dedicated to his job, he often felt overwhelmed by the challenges of the community, which led him to develop a more cynical and protective mentality. Jake's biases are subtly woven into his perspective. He perceives homelessness as a sign of personal failure, believing that those on the streets have made poor choices. His encounters with individuals experiencing homelessness have often been marked by suspicion rather than empathy, leading him to view them as potential criminals rather than human beings in need. This viewpoint is compounded by the racial dynamics of the community. Jake unconsciously associates homelessness and crime with the Black population. His upbringing in a predominantly white neighborhood and the influence of media narratives surrounding crime have further solidified these biases. He often approaches situations with a preconceived notion that people of color are more likely to be involved in illicit activities, leading him to treat them with skepticism. While he prides himself on upholding the law, Jake's racial bias creates a barrier between him and the community he is sworn to protect. This narrow perspective stifles his ability to connect with individuals like Maya, whom he may perceive as just another statistic rather than a person with dreams and struggles. It was a frigid Tuesday night when Officer Jake Thompson began his routine patrol of the city's streets. The glow of street lights painted the sidewalks in shades of yellow and orange, creating an illusion of warmth that did little to combat the cold biting through the air. As he drove through the familiar neighborhoods, he often found himself lost in thought, wrestling with the weight of his responsibilities. The sirens and lights were almost an afterthought. He rarely expected to encounter anything unusual. As he rounded the corner near the bus stop, something caught his eye. A small figure huddled beneath a tattered blanket, shivering in the open air. Jake's brow furrowed. It was just another homeless person, he thought, likely looking for a place to sleep. He felt an initial wave of annoyance. This was a sight he'd grown accustomed to, and part of him wished they would find somewhere else to linger. It's something about the girl's posture, a tight curl, as if trying to make herself as small as possible, pulled at his curiosity. Jake parked his cruiser and stepped out, a mix of indifference and irritation churning in his gut. He approached the BU must stop, prepared to issue a warning about loitering or to encourage her to move along. However, as he drew closer, he realized that this was no ordinary encounter. The girl, no older than 12, lifted her head, and the soft glow of the streetlight illuminated her wide, frightened eyes. They held a vulnerability that cut through his defenses. In that moment, his annoyance began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of unease. He crouched beside her. Jake's initial questions were met with her tentative responses. She introduced herself as Maya, her voice barely above a whisper. With each word, she shared snippets of her life, how she had been living at the bus stop since her mother disappeared, her longing for safety, and her dreams of becoming an artist. The more he listened, the more the walls he had built around himself began to crumble. Suddenly, it hit him. This was not just another statistic, but a child his daughter's age, fighting to survive in a world that had turned its back on her. The weight of his biases, the indifference he had shown to those in need, and the realization that this girl represented so many others flooded over him like a tidal wave. Tears brimmed in his eyes as he struggled to comprehend the gravity of her situation. Overcome with emotion, Jake broke down, unable to hold back the tears that streamed down his face. In that moment, he understood that he had failed not just Maya, but countless others who had fallen through the cracks of society, and it shook him to his core as Officer Jake Thompson sat beside Maya at the bus stop. The chill of the night faded into the background, overshadowed by the warmth of an awakening within him. The tears that had flowed freely moments before now served as a release, allowing him to confront the uncomfortable truths he had long avoided. In the solitude of the night, he began to reflect on the prejudices he had carried throughout his career. He thought of the countless times he had rolled his eyes at homeless individuals, dismissing them as lazy or troublemakers. Without a second thought, he recalled the times he had approached situations with preconceived notions, viewing young black men and women as threats instead of people with stories, dreams, and struggles. Jake recognized that his views were not isolated incidents. They were steeped in a culture that often dehumanized marginalized communities. He realized that each time he had responded to a call involving a person experiencing homelessness or a person of color, he had been influenced by a narrative that painted them as others. This moment with Maya forced him to confront the deep-seated biases that had shaped his interactions and decisions on the job. He felt ashamed, grappling with the realization that he had contributed to the cycle of misunderstanding and neglect in that vulnerable space. Jake's understanding expanded beyond individual actions to the broader systemic issues that contributed to my predicament. He began to see how racism permeated the very fabric of society, affecting access to resources, education, and support systems. He recognized that the systemic neglect of people like Maya was rooted in an entrenched belief that certain lives mattered less than others. It was not just about this one girl at the bus stop. It was about a myriad of policies and societal attitudes that had allowed her to slip through the cracks. Jake's heart ached for Maya and the countless others who were similarly marginalized. He understood that their struggles were not due to personal failures, but rather a combination of societal difference and systemic barriers. This realization ignited a spark within him, a newfound commitment to advocate for change within his community and the police force. The experience had become a turning point in his life, one that would reshape his interactions and push him to fight against the very prejudices he had unknowingly perpetuated. As he looked at Maya, he vowed to see her not as a statistic, but as a symbol of resilience and potential, a reminder that everyone deserves compassion and support, regardless of their circumstances. After the emotional encounter with Maya, Officer Jake Thompson felt a profound sense of responsibility wash over him. No longer could he view his role as simply enforcing the law. He recognized that he had the power to be a force for positive change in his community, driven by a desire to make amends for the indifference he had previously shown. Jake took immediate action. He pulled out his phone and began searching for local shelters and community organizations that could provide support for Maya. With a determined heart, he reached out to a nearby Edge shelter known for its outreach program. Speaking directly to the director, he explained Maya's situation and emphasized the urgency of getting her off the streets. The director expressed gratitude for the officers' call, sharing that they had resources available, including safe housing, food, and counseling services. Jake made sure to coordinate a safe transport from Maya to the shelter, wanting her to feel supported and cared for in every step of the process. In the following days, he also visited community organizations seeking to understand their efforts in addressing homelessness and systemic issues within the community. He learned about the barriers many faced and began to forge partnerships between the police department and these groups, believing that collaboration was key to effective change. This transformative experience deeply influenced Jake's approach to policing and his interactions with the community. Rather than merely viewing himself as an enforcer of the law, he embraced a more holistic role as a protector and advocate. He committed to being present in the community, actively engaging with its residents and seeking to understand their struggles rather than judging them at the precinct. Jake began to share his story with his colleagues, urging them to reconsider their own biases and perceptions of the marginalized individuals they encountered on duty. He organized training sessions focused on cultural sensitivity, emphasizing the importance of empathy and understanding in law enforcement. His efforts sparked discussions within the department about the need for change and accountability. As he patrolled the streets, Jake made it a priority to connect with individuals experiencing homelessness, listening to their stories and directing them to resources that could help. He encouraged his fellow officers to approach their work with compassion, reminding them that every person they encountered was a human being deserving of dignity and respect. The shift in Jake's perspective rippled through the community, helping to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the residents they served. He became known not just as a police officer, but as a community ally dedicated to breaking down barriers and advocating for those who had been historically marginalized. Through his actions, Jake began to change the narrative, transforming a once one-dimensional view of policing into a compassionate and proactive approach that sought to uplift and empower the very community he had vowed to protect. Inspired by his encounter with Maya, Officer Jake Thompson recognized the need for a broader conversation within the police department and the community about racism, homelessness, and the importance of empathy. He organized a community forum inviting residents, local leaders, and his fellow officers to share their perspectives and experiences in this safe space. Jake opened up about his transformation, recounting the powerful moment that changed his outlook on policing and the people he served. His vulnerability sparked a wave of discussion as attendees shared their own stories of prejudice and struggles within the community. The conversation shifted from blaming individuals to examining systemic issues that perpetuated racism and homelessness. Jake encouraged everyone to consider how they could contribute to a culture of compassion and understanding, fostering a community that uplifted those in need rather than push them aside. To further amplify the message, Jake collaborated with local media outlets to share Maya's story. Articles and news segments highlighted her resilience and the challenges faced by many like her. This exposure not only humanized those experiencing homelessness, but also prompted citizens to reflect on their own biases and attitudes. A campaign resonated deeply, creating an urgent call to action for the entire community. The response from the community was overwhelming, inspired by the discussions initiated by Officer Thompson. Residents began organizing themselves to support Maya and others in similar situations. A local nonprofit organization that focused on homelessness rallied community members to launch a fundraising campaign. They set up donation drives, collecting clothing, hygiene products, and essential supplies for those in need. Additionally, volunteers established a mentoring program aimed at helping young individuals experiencing homelessness, pairing them with caring adults who could provide guidance and support. Workshops were organized to equip these young people with skills and resume writing, job interviews, and financial literacy, helping them build a path towards stability and independence. The Awareness campaign also encouraged local businesses to get involved. Cafes and restaurants began offering meals to those in need, while others provided job opportunities specifically for individuals experiencing homelessness. Fundraisers at local schools allowed students to participate in discussions about empathy and social justice, encouraging them to contribute to the cause. As the community united to support Maya, they not only addressed her immediate needs, but also took significant steps to combat the systemic issues that had allowed her to slip through the cracks. The collaborative efforts fostered a sense of solidarity and responsibility among residents, reinforcing the idea that everyone could play a role in making a difference through collective action. The community began to shift its narrative from one of neglect to one of compassion and support, ensuring that stories like Maya would not be repeated. The collective commitment to change fostered an environment where everyone, regardless of their circumstances, could find hope and support, proving that empathy and community could pave the way for a brighter future. The journey that began at a lonely bus stop transformed both Maya and Officer Jake Thompson in profound ways. For Maya, the immediate assistance she received from the shelter not only provided her with a safe place to stay, but also opened doors to new opportunities. With the help of mentors and community resources, she was able to continue her education, set personal goals, and regain her confidence. The scars of her past remained, but they served as a testament to her resilience and determination. She became an advocate for others in similar situations, sharing her story to inspire change and raise awareness about homelessness and systemic inequities. Meanwhile, Officer Jake Thompson emerged from his emotional encounter with a renewed sense of purpose. The biases that had once clouded his judgment were replaced by a commitment to understanding and serving his community with compassion. He became a leader in promoting empathy within the police department, encouraging his colleagues to see beyond uniforms and badges, to recognize the humanity in every individual. As he worked tirelessly to foster positive relationships between law enforcement and the community, he witnessed firsthand the transformative power of understanding and collaboration. The ripple effects of their stories extended far beyond their individual transformations. The collective action of the community demonstrated that change is possible when people come together with a shared vision for a better future. Empathy became a powerful catalyst, bridging divides and encouraging residents to confront the uncomfortable truths about racism and homelessness. Through education, support, and ongoing dialogue, the community forged a path toward healing and understanding, creating an environment where compassion replaced prejudice. In the end, the story of Maya and Officer Thompson stands as a beacon of age